If you've ever felt that, that constant modern hum of just being perpetually overwhelmed, the endless information, all the stuff we seem to gather, the sheer number of decisions we face every single day, then you know exactly what we're diving into today.
It's a really pervasive feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the data, well, it paints a stark picture. A huge majority of adults report chronic stress. And globally, anxiety and depression rates jumped about 25% since the pandemic. We're talking over 1 billion people affected.
Wow, 1 billion.
Yeah. And then think about how, for instance, people living in cities spend maybe 90% of their time indoors. It just shows this real disconnect from the natural world we actually evolved in.
That's a stark reality. It really highlights how fundamental these pressures are, not just, fleeting annoyances. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack a stack of insights from, well, all sorts of sources. We want to reveal how understanding some fundamental things about our minds, our behaviors, our environments, how that can be a real shortcut. A shortcut to clarity, maybe some control, and ultimately a deeper sense of well-being in this world that, let's face it, often feels just overwhelmingly complex. So where should we start? Maybe with simplifying things.
Let's start there. Let's look at minimalism, but let's push past just the idea of decluttering your house. At its heart, it's really a philosophy. It emphasizes living with intention, right? Prioritizing quality over just sheer quantity and cultivating maybe some inner peace, which is, a stark contrast to that overwhelming modern life we just mentioned.
Right, and this urge to simplify, it isn't exactly new, is it? I mean, our sources trace it way back.
Oh, absolutely. Think about ancient philosophies like Stoicism, big emphasis on self-control, focusing on what you can influence. Or Buddhism, with its teachings on detachment from, material desires. Even groups like the Shakers, historically, they embrace simple, functional design in, well, pretty much every aspect of their lives. So yeah, these ideas have really deep roots across cultures and time.
What's really striking, though, is the actual psychological impact of clutter. Physical clutter, digital clutter, all of it. We often think of it as just being messy, but what does the research actually say about how it affects us inside?
The research is pretty clear, actually. Cluttered environments are linked to higher levels of stress hormones, particularly cortisol. And this seems especially true for women, interestingly. All that constant visual and sensory input, it isn't just distracting. It actively gets in the way of focus and contributes to this kind of persistent unease. So our external chaos isn't just untidy, it's literally changing our internal chemistry, making us more stressed, less able to think clearly.
And it's not just the physical stuff, right? What about all the digital noise? The pings, the emails, the feeds. Does that have a similar effect, maybe even sneakier?
It absolutely does. Digital clutter, those constant notifications, overflowing inboxes, the endless pull of social media, it significantly eats into our working memory. Some research suggests it can deplete it by as much as 15%.
15%.
Wow. So those seemingly small digital distractions, they really add up, chipping away at our ability to think and focus.
That's powerful. So, okay, if clutter drains us like that, what happens when we do the opposite? When we actually simplify?
Well, the flip side is pretty encouraging. Individuals in more minimalist spaces, they report noticeably lower stress levels. We're talking around 20% less stress. And a greater ability to concentrate, maybe up to 25% higher. It basically eases the cognitive load. It's like clearing the mental highway so your thoughts can actually flow.
And then there's decision fatigue. I mean, just think about this number for a second. The average person makes something like 35,000 decisions every single day. That's not just a statistic, it's a constant drain on our mental battery, right? It leads to procrastination, maybe worse judgment calls. So how does minimalism help with that onslaught?
It helps by, well, simply reducing the sheer number of choices you have to make. Take Mark in London, one of the examples from our sources. He adopted a really tight 15-piece capsule wardrobe. Seems small, right? But this led to a reported 30% increase in his coding efficiency, and he felt calmer, just by eliminating that one daily decision. What should I wear? That's mental energy freed up for things that actually matter to him.
And what's really compelling is how a cleaner environment doesn't just cut stress, but seems to actually boost our focus and, our output. Can you tell us more about that link?
Yeah, there are studies showing around an 18% faster task completion rate and 12% fewer errors in more minimalist workspaces. Think about Aisha. She's a freelance writer in Cape Town mentioned in the research. By transforming her cluttered office into a more streamlined space, she didn't just feel better. She boosted her writing output by 30%. It shows a pretty direct link between your environment and your performance.
Okay, so by actively curating, our stuff and even our commitments, How does that translate into more mindfulness, more clarity day to day?
It sort of creates this positive feedback loop. Research connects minimalist practices to about a 25% increase in self-reported mindfulness and overall well-being. Take Elena in Madrid. She intentionally cut back on her screen time, and she rediscovered her appreciation for simple things, like just her morning coffee or watching her kids play. This brought a deeper sense of presence simply because she wasn't constantly being pulled away by external noise and demands.
And, you know, in a world that feels so chaotic sometimes, minimalism seems like it offers a real tool against anxiety. How does taking charge of your immediate environment using these principles help with that feeling of control?
It's incredibly empowering, actually. Just the act of decluttering physical spaces. It's been shown to lead to a 15% reduction in anxiety symptoms for people with generalized anxiety. There was Hiroshi in Tokyo. He found that organizing his small, previously chaotic apartment really helped him gain a sense of control over his anxiety. It created this tranquil space he could use for daily meditation. It was like a physical manifestation of an internal shift. It demonstrates that taking control of your space can genuinely help you feel more in control inside.
It sounds like the benefits ripple out even further into our emotional lives. Let's talk about gratitude. Our consumer culture often pushes us to want more, which can lead to feeling like we never have enough. How does minimalism shift that?
It redirects your focus, fundamentally. Studies show a clear link between minimalist practices and about a 20% jump in gratitude and overall life satisfaction. Priya in Mumbai, for example. She found real contentment in a simpler life after consciously letting go of chasing material things. She started appreciating her daily routines, her time with loved ones instead. It's a shift from seeking satisfaction out there to finding it in here.
And it sounds like it can nurture deeper relationships too. How does being more intentional with our time and our commitments lead to that?
Well, by being more intentional, you naturally start prioritizing quality over just quantity.
Yeah.
James in Sydney, for instance, he cut back on networking events to spend more quality time with his family. This strengthened those bonds, and he reported a 30% increase in his relationship satisfaction. He made a conscious choice for deeper connection over more superficial engagement.
Minimalism also seems to help build emotional resilience. How does that work? Does it connect to therapy ideas?
Yeah, it does align quite well. By encouraging detachment from possessions and maybe unrealistic expectations, it echoes approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. ACT focuses on accepting what you can't control and committing to actions aligned with your values. And research suggests about an 18% increase in resilience during big life changes for people practicing minimalism. Take Liwi in Beijing. After a health scare, he consciously shed an identity that was really tied up in his possessions, and he found a deeper sense of inner calm and resilience. He realized his worth wasn't tied to his stuff.
And it can even help with emotional healing, especially around things tied to difficult memories.
Yes, letting go of those items can be incredibly cathartic. It correlates with about a 12% reduction in depression symptoms in some cases. Maria in Sao Paulo, for example, she experienced a real emotional release by letting go of mementos from a difficult past relationship. It literally created space, both physically and mentally, for a new beginning. It's a physical act supporting psychological closure.
It's also really important to remember that minimalism isn't just one specific aesthetic, right? Like, it's not just white walls and empty rooms. It's adaptable.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a rigid style guide. You see its core ideas reflected in Japanese wabi-sabi, which finds beauty in imperfection and transience, or Scandinavian hygge, which is all about creating cozy, contented spaces and experiences. Even in, say, resourceful living you might see in developing nations, there's often an inherent intentionality about what's acquired and kept out of necessity. The core ideas, intention, mindful curation, they can really be embraced by anyone, anywhere, in their own way.
Okay, so simplifying our physical and digital worlds helps manage the present. But our experience of life is also profoundly shaped by something way more elusive. Our perception of time itself. That feeling, time flying when you're having fun or dragging like crazy when you're bored. It's not just a feeling, is it? It's our subjective clock.
Exactly. While the clock ticks objectively, our minds experience time much more fluidly. It stretches, it shrinks, depends on your mental state, your age, your environment, the context. And it's not just one single time center in the brain. It's a complex dance involving multiple regions, like the cerebellum for timing motor tasks, the basal ganglia for tracking intervals, the prefrontal cortex for making judgments about time.
So it's not one clock, it's like a whole orchestra playing together. How does that complex system actually translate into how we feel time passing day to day?
Well, different models like the pacemaker accumulator model or oscillatory models, attentional models, They all point to how heavily our attention influences perceived duration. Think about hitting snooze for 10 minutes that feel like 30 seconds, or waiting 30 seconds for the microwave that feels like an eternity.
Right.
Your
Totally.
intention is absolutely key. When you're really absorbed, focused, time often seems to compress, just fly by.
That makes perfect sense. And beyond just where our attention is, does our brain chemistry, like neurotransmitters, play a role too?
It definitely does. Neurotransmitters like dopamine, for instance, are often linked to time feeling like it's passing faster. Serotonin might make it feel slower. Norepinephrine, which relates to alertness, naturally influences how precisely we track time passing. So yeah, your brain's internal chemical balance is constantly kind of fine-tuning your subjective clock.
Now, something so many of us feel that sense that time speeds up as we get older. Is there any science behind that, or is it just, nostalgia talking?
Oh, there definitely seems to be a scientific basis. One theory points to our metabolic rate slowing down as we age. Younger brains might process more information per second, let's say, making subjective time feel denser, packed with more moments. Another big factor is novelty. As kids, almost everything is new, right? Creating tons of distinct memories. That makes time feel long when you look back.
Those endless summers.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But as adults, life often becomes more routine. Fewer truly novel experiences to mark time's passage. This tends to compress our retrospective sense of time, giving us that blinked and missed it feeling about our adult years.
That really resonates. It's not just feeling wistful, it's a real neurological and experiential shift tied to processing speed and memory density. And it's interesting, too, that certain conditions like ADHD or Parkinson's, which involves dopamine deficiency and schizophrenia, they can also significantly distort how people perceive time.
And beyond the biology and aging, psychological factors are huge shapers of our internal clock. Like we said, when you're absorbed, time flies. Bored or focusing on time, it drags. Multitasking can even make time feel shorter because your attention is split, and emotions are incredibly powerful. Fear and anxiety tend to stretch time. That slow motion effect people report during accidents.
Yeah.
That's your brain in high alert, processing more details.
Hmm.
Conversely, joy, excitement, that's when time flies, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
And memory, you mentioned the vacation paradox earlier. How does that work?
It's a great illustration. Retrospectively looking back, the perceived length of a period relates to how many distinct memories you formed. More distinct memories equals a subjectively longer duration in hindsight.
Mm.
So the first few days of a vacation feel long because everything's new, memorable. But as you settle into a routine, later days blur together, making the whole trip seem shorter when you look back on it. Even sustained states matter. Chronic stress can make time feel like it's dragging endlessly, while deep relaxation, like in meditation, can make time seem to just dissolve.
This makes me wonder, do different cultures actually experience time differently?
Oh, absolutely. There's a big distinction between monochronic and polychronic cultures. Monochronic cultures, common in places like Germany or the US, tend to see time as linear, something to be scheduled, saved, spent wisely. Punctuality is key. Polychronic cultures, more common in Latin America or the Middle East, see time as more fluid, flexible. Juggling multiple things at once is normal, and relationships often take priority over strict schedules. Even the language we use can subtly influence how we think about and plan for the future.
And what about modern life? Technology. Our whole digital culture seems built for speed. How's that messing with our sense of time?
It's definitely having an impact. Our constant exposure to instant messaging, next-day delivery, super short videos, it conditions us for immediate gratification. This can lead to impatience, making even brief waits feel intolerable. And all that constant digital stimulation gives little dopamine hits, which can make slower-paced offline activities feel, well, kind of dull in comparison. It might be warping our baseline perception, making us feel perpetually rushed or time poor.
It's fascinating and a bit scary how tech might be rewiring our internal clocks. What about altered states, like meditation or even drugs?
They can dramatically distort time perception. Psychedelics, for example, can make time feel infinite, nonlinear, or just non-existent. Cannabis often makes time feel like it's slowing down significantly. Meditators frequently report a sense of time dissolving, which might be linked to reduced activity in the brain's default mode network, the part involved in self-thought and mind-wandering. Even general anesthesia, losing consciousness, shows how deeply our experience of time is tied to consciousness itself.
And sleep, or maybe lack of sleep. How does that fit in?
Sleep deprivation really messes with time judgment. It also impairs memory consolidation, which can make periods feel shorter or fragmented when you look back. Dreams often have this bizarrely condensed or expanded sense of time, and jet lag, by throwing off our internal circadian rhythms, directly skews our time perception too. Sleep is just fundamental for keeping our internal clocks running smoothly.
This all sounds incredibly complex, especially when difficult things happen. What about trauma or PTSD? How does that affect time?
During a traumatic event, many people report time dilation, that slow motion feeling. It's likely the brain trying frantically to capture every single detail for survival. Afterwards, with PTSD, time perception can become really fragmented. Flashbacks are a key feature, and they intensely disrupt normal temporal awareness. It's like the past violently intrudes on the present, blurring those lines. It's a profound shattering of the subjective clock.
So, if time is so subjective, influenced by everything from our attention to our culture to trauma, what does this all mean for, say, how we make decisions or
Yeah.
even broader societal stuff?
It has surprisingly big implications. On a personal level, how you perceive future time influences your ability to delay gratification. This relates to future discounting, basically. We tend to value future rewards less just because they're further away. Culturally, different time perceptions affect the whole pace of society, maybe prioritizing efficiency over quality of life or vice versa. And that feeling of time poverty, feeling constantly rushed, regardless of how many hours you actually have, that's a major modern stressor linked to burnout.
It's incredible how subjective it all is. Time isn't just ticking seconds, it's really the texture of our experience. Understanding these influences feels like it could give you more agency, more intention in how you navigate it.
Exactly. Just recognizing these subjective forces is the crucial first step toward maybe managing them a bit better.
Okay, now let's shift gears slightly and explore how our choices, which we often like to think are purely logical, are actually swayed by all these hidden forces. Biases, emotions, social cues, even the layout of a room.
Indeed. Daniel Kahneman's work here is foundational with his two-system model of the brain. System 1 is our brain's autopilot. It's fast, automatic, intuitive. It relies heavily on mental shortcuts or heuristics. It's super efficient for routine stuff, but it's definitely prone to making mistakes.
So, like instantly recognizing a friend or maybe swerving the car without even thinking, that's system one just doing its job quickly, saving energy.
Precisely. System 2, on the other hand, that's our brain's manual control. It's slower, more analytical. It requires conscious effort and focus. You use System 2 for complex decisions like solving a tough math problem or carefully comparing two job offers. Basically, System 1 handles most of the day-to-day, freeing up System 2 for the bigger, trickier things.
But that efficiency of system one comes at a cost, right? Those cognitive biases you mentioned.
Yes, that's the catch. These are systematic thinking errors, predictable ways our thinking deviates from pure logic or rationality. A really common one is the availability heuristic. We estimate how likely something is based on how easily examples pop into our head. So if you see lots of news about a plane crash, flying starts to feel riskier than it statistically is just because those dramatic examples are so available in your memory.
Or confirmation bias, where we kind of unconsciously look for information that backs up what we already believe. We click the links that agree with us.
Exactly. And the anchoring effect. The first piece of info you get, especially if it's a number, heavily influences everything that follows. Think about seeing a ridiculously priced $500 shirt. Suddenly, a $100 shirt next to it seems like a bargain, right? Retailers use this all the time with high original prices. Then there's loss aversion. The pain of losing something feels psychologically stronger than the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. This makes us stick with bad situations sometimes, just to avoid a perceived loss.
Oh, that one feels so familiar. And choice overload? Too many options leading to paralysis. I remember reading about the famous jam experiment.
Yeah.
People were less likely to buy jam when faced with 24 kinds versus just 6. It's like scrolling Netflix for an hour and then just giving up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Smart retailers try to manage this by filtering options for you. But just being aware of these biases is huge. It lets you pause and ask, okay, wait, am I choosing this because it's genuinely the best option? Or is it because of how it's framed or how my brain's defaulting right now?
And speaking of framing, emotions are massive players in our decisions, often way more than we like to admit. The affect heuristic, right? Our feelings about something color-related choices. Reading an important email when you're stressed versus when you're upbeat. Totally different judgment.
Absolutely. And Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis adds another layer. Those gut feelings, they aren't just random. They're like rapid summaries of your past experiences and the emotions tied to them. They give you these subtle physical sensations that guide your choices. That little thrill of excitement before an impulse buy, that's a somatic marker. Recognizing it as an emotional trigger lets you engage System 2, pause, and consciously decide, instead of just reacting.
Okay, let's shift to something that feels, well, incredibly vital right now. Nature. Its power to calm us, to help us think clearly. It feels like a crucial, often really accessible antidote to so many modern pressures.
The science behind it is truly compelling. There's this idea of biophilia, the innate human tendency to connect with nature, likely hardwired from our evolutionary past. And studies show just 20 minutes spent in nature, some call them nature pills, can significantly lower cortisol, our main stress hormone. It improves mood, sharpens focus. Brain imaging studies are fascinating too. Simply looking at pictures of natural scenes activates reward centers in the brain,
Yeah.
releasing dopamine. Urban scenes. They can trigger the amygdala, the fear and stress center. Maria, in Chicago, dealing with chronic stress, she reported a 30% drop in her anxiety levels just from taking regular guided walks in Garfield Park.
30% is huge. So it's not just stress relief, it affects our thinking too, our ability to focus.
Yes, that's where attention restoration theory, or RT, comes in. Modern life demands constant, draining, directed attention, like focusing on a screen or navigating traffic. Nature, though, offers what's called soft fascination, effortless attention, like watching clouds drift or listening to birdsong. This allows those directed attention circuits in our brain to rest and recover. It's like hitting a cognitive reset button. Studies have even shown less activity in brain areas linked to rumination, that repetitive worrying after a walk in nature, compared to a walk in an urban setting. And think about this. Office workers who just had a view of green space reported 15% higher job satisfaction and less stress. David, an engineer in Seattle, found that 15-minute walks in a nearby nature reserve improved not only his focus, but his whole team's productivity by about 10%.
Wow, just a view makes a difference. Beyond the mental side, are there actual physical changes happening in our bodies when we're in nature?
Absolutely. Take Shinrin-yoku, the Japanese practice of forest bathing. Just an hour can lower blood pressure by around 6% and heart rate by 4%. And what's really intriguing is that trees release these compounds called phytoncides, airborne chemicals. There's evidence they might actually boost our immune system, specifically increasing our natural killer cells.
Really? From breathing forest air?
Yeah, potentially. And large reviews of studies, meta-analyses confirm that being in nature consistently lowers various physiological markers of stress. Hiroshi, the accountant in Tokyo we mentioned earlier, he was actually prescribed forest bathing. He saw a 25% decrease in his anxiety and significant drops in blood pressure after just 3 months.
So nature could even be changing our brains over time through neuroplasticity.
It appears so. Regular time in nature might increase levels of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's a protein crucial for learning, memory, and mood regulation. Higher BDNF could potentially lessen symptoms of depression and anxiety over time. Lisa, who was recovering from trauma in Australia, participated in a 2-week nature retreat. She saw a 20% increase in her BDNF levels and reported a 35% reduction in her PTSD symptoms. It really speaks to nature's deep potential for healing.
That's incredible. And what about the broader psychological effects, beyond just stress?
Well, access to green space can cut general stress by 10–15%. And spending about 2 hours a week in nature is linked to better emotional regulation, more stability. Nature's sensory richness, the sounds, the smells, the textures, it pulls you into the present moment almost automatically. Cuts through the mental chatter, fosters mindfulness. Sarah, a marketing exec in New York, found her anxiety dropped by 40% just from daily 20-minute mindful walks in Central Park.
And it goes even further, right? Helping with depression, boosting creativity.
Yes. Nature exposure influences key neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which regulate mood. Living within a kilometer of green space is associated with a 20% lower likelihood of depression. Michael, a veteran dealing with PTSD and depression, described this profound sense of awe watching a meteor shower during a wilderness therapy program. His depression scores dropped by 30% after that experience.
Wow. Awe is powerful.
It really is. Furthermore, being in nature enhances cognitive function and divergent thinking, our ability to come up with new, creative ideas. Emma, a graphic designer in London, got over a creative block just by going out and sketching in Regent's Park. And if you practice mindfulness exercises in nature, the stress reduction benefits are about 20% greater compared to doing them indoors. Aisha, the teacher in Mumbai, found meditating in a botanical garden really amplified the benefits, significantly reducing her burnout scores.
Okay, let's dig into something really fundamental to making changes stick. Habits. That drive we have to improve, reach goals. It's not really about quick fixes or just finding motivation, is it? It's about understanding the actual science behind building habits that last.
Exactly. Habits are truly the engine for any lasting change. Your brain is incredibly efficient. It's always looking for ways to save energy. When you repeat an action over and over, your brain literally creates a dedicated neural pathway. Think of it like forging a path in a forest. The more you use it, the clearer and easier it gets until you can walk it without really thinking. That automatic pathway, that's the habit.
Which brings us to that core model, the habit loop. It seems like any habit, good or bad, follows this four-stage cycle. It starts with the cue, right? The
So,
trigger.
that's right. The cue is the trigger telling your brain, okay, run this automatic program now. It could be an alarm clock, finishing dinner, even just feeling stressed or bored. The cue then leads to the craving. And this is key. The craving usually isn't for the habit itself, but for the feeling or the change in state the habit promises. You might not crave exercise, but you crave the energy boost or the feeling of accomplishment afterwards. Then comes the response. That's the actual habit or behavior. Lacing up running shoes, grabbing your phone. And finally, the reward. The positive payoff that satisfies the craving and reinforces the whole loop. Like feeling bored at your desk, picking up your phone, response, getting a brief distraction, reward, boom, that loop gets stronger.
Understanding that loop feels like where the power is. It shows you the points you can actually intervene to change a habit. And this blueprint, based on the research, offers a practical toolkit, the 4 laws of behavior change. For good habits, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. For bad habits, just flip it. Invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying. Let's break down the first law. Make it obvious. How do we set up our environment to actually help us?
This law targets the cue. Your environment acts like this invisible hand guiding your actions. So you want to design it to make cues for good habits really visible and hide the cues for bad ones. Sarah, the trainer, for example, she tells clients, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Can't miss them. Maria, the manager, makes sure she puts a physical book, not her phone, on her nightstand. Small changes, but they make the desired action obvious.
And for bad habits, you do the opposite, right? Charge your phone in another room overnight, or that ice block method for credit cards, literally freezing them to add hassle to impulse buys. There's also habit stacking, linking a new habit to one you already do.
Yeah, that's super effective. John, the engineer, wanted to meditate consistently, so his rule became, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
Oh.
The existing strong habit pouring coffee becomes the automatic trigger for the new one. Implementation intentions also really boost your odds. It gets super specific. I will do this behavior at this time in this location. David, the writer. He became much more consistent by planning exactly, I will write for 30 minutes at 7 a.m. at my desk. That specificity makes a huge difference.
Okay, law number 2, make it attractive. This targets the craving. We're wired to move towards pleasure, so how do we make these habits we want to build feel more appealing? Especially if they don't initially.
One great technique is temptation bundling. You pair something you need to do with something you genuinely want to do. Like Sarah, the student, who only allowed herself to watch her favorite Netflix show while she was on the treadmill.
Yeah, that's clever.
It makes the workout feel less like a chore, more like a gateway to enjoyment. Joining a culture where your desired habit is the norm is also incredibly powerful. Mark found joining a hiking group made being active way easier and more fun because it was just what the group did. And reframing your mindset helps too. Shifting from, ugh, I have to go to the gym, to, okay, I get to build strength and feel more energetic today, changes the whole emotional vibe.
That's brilliant. Okay, law 3, make it easy. This focuses on the response, the actual doing part. How do we reduce the friction for good habits and increase it for bad ones?
It's all about smoothing the path for good habits and putting up roadblocks for bad ones. Prep healthy meals on Sunday, make them grab and go. Keep a filled water bottle on your desk. Automate bill payments, set it and forget it. For bad habits, increase the friction. Delete saved credit card info online. Unplug the game console and put it in a closet. Use app blockers on your phone. The harder it is to start, the less likely you are to do it.
I really like the simplicity of the 2-minute rule. Can you explain that one?
The 2-minute rule is genius for getting started. You scale down any new habit, so the very first step takes less than 2 minutes. Goal is to read more. 2-minute habit. Read 1 page, 1 exercise, put on my running shoes, want to write 1 sentence. It lowers the barrier so much, it focuses just on starting, which is often the hardest part. Automation, like setting up automatic savings transfers, also remove the decision point. And priming the environment, setting things up beforehand, laying out gym clothes, cleaning the kitchen right after dinner so it's ready for breakfast, makes the next step smooth. Right. And finally, law 4, make it satisfying. This closes the loop, reinforces the habit. How do we make sure there's some kind of immediate payoff? Satisfaction needs to feel immediate to really lock in the habit. Our brains prioritize immediate rewards. So instead of vaguely saving money, maybe immediately transfer the $5 you didn't spend on coffee into a separate fund account. See it add up. After flossing, focus on that immediate, fresh, clean feeling, not just the distant benefit of avoiding cavities. Language apps use points and badges right away. Instant gratification. Tracking your habits gives visual proof of progress. Seeing that streak on a habit tracker app or putting an X on a calendar that don't break the chain method feels satisfying. Small, guilt-free rewards tied to completion can work too. Maybe 10 minutes of guilt-free web browsing after finishing a work task. And accountability partners. They provide immediate social feedback, positive or negative, making you more likely to follow through.
Okay, so we have the 4 laws for getting habits started, but keeping them going long term. That often feels like the real challenge. What helps embed them for good?
A really profound shift is moving towards identity-based habits. Instead of focusing just on the outcome like I want to lose 20 pounds, you focus on the person you want to become. I am a healthy person.
Hmm.
Then, every small action, choosing the salad, going for that walk, becomes like a vote for that desired identity. It reinforces who you believe you are.
That's a powerful reframe. And how do we stay motivated? Avoid just getting bored with the routine.
The Goldilocks rule is helpful here. You want to keep your habits in that sweet spot of being slightly challenging. Not so hard they're discouraging, but not so easy they become boring. You gradually increase the difficulty just enough to stay engaged. This ties into a bigger point. True discipline isn't about waiting for motivation. It's about showing up consistently, regardless of how you feel. And that consistency is built through reliable systems, not just chasing goals or waiting for inspiration to strike. Focus on building the system.
And what about when we mess up? Because, let's be honest, setbacks happen. How do we bounce back?
The never miss twice rule is key. One missed workout, that's life, it happens. An outlier, 2 missed workouts in a row. Okay, that's the start of a new unwanted pattern. So the goal is just get back on track immediately after one slip-up. Also, have an if-then plan for likely obstacles. If I have to travel for work, then I will do a 20-minute bodyweight workout in my hotel room. And crucially, forgive yourself quickly. Learn from it, maybe tweak the system, but don't let one stumble derail everything. Get back to it.
And finally, to really master habits for the long haul, what's a good practice to put in place?
Doing ongoing habit audits and reviews is really useful. Schedule maybe 10-15 minutes each week just to look at your habits, what went well, what didn't, make small adjustments. Maybe once a year, do a bigger identity review. Are my habits still aligned with the person I want to be, with my current goals? It's about continuous iteration and making sure your systems serve you.
Okay, let's pivot now to something absolutely fundamental to how we connect with each other, often without even saying a word. Body language and facial expressions. It's this whole nonverbal vocabulary, right? Making up, some say, maybe up to 80% of our communication.
It's incredibly powerful, definitely. But, and this is it's not foolproof, not even close. Interpreting it requires real caution. Signals can be manipulated, they can be totally unintentional, or they can mean completely different things depending on the whole situation, the context. Cultural differences are huge. Eye contact, for instance. In many Western cultures, it signals sincerity, engagement. In some Eastern cultures, avoiding prolonged direct gaze is actually a sign of respect. Developmental differences matter too. Fidgeting in someone who's neurodiverse might be about focus or self-soothing, not boredom or deception. And psychological factors like social anxiety can make someone struggle with eye contact simply because it feels intensely uncomfortable, not because they're hiding anything.
That's so important to remember. Context is key. And what's really interesting is how our brains seem to prioritize these nonverbal signals when things don't match up, right? Like someone saying, I'm fine, but looking totally miserable.
Exactly. Your brain tends to believe the body over the words when there's a mismatch. The face and eyes are probably the most expressive parts. We have these universal core emotions, joy, anger, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, whose expressions are pretty widely recognized across cultures. Smiles are interesting too. Differentiating a genuine Duchenne smile, the kind that reaches the eyes, creates crinkles from a more polite, social, or even insincere smile that only involves the mouth. And micro-expressions. These are incredibly brief, involuntary flashes of emotion across the face, like 125th of a second. They can leak hidden feelings before someone can consciously mask them. Eye gaze tells a story too. Direct contact usually means interest, engagement. Too much can feel intense, even threatening. Averting gaze might mean distraction, discomfort, maybe hesitation. Our eyes often follow what genuinely interests us. Blinking rate can change too. Rapid blinking might signal stress, discomfort, or thinking hard, but it's not a reliable sign of lying, despite popular belief. Infrequent blinking might suggest conscious control. Even pupil size changes unconsciously. Dilation can indicate positive feelings, interest, attraction, arousal. Contraction might signal dislike or negativity. And subtle things, like the glabella, that spot between your eyebrows tightening, can mean concentration or frustration. A slight nose wrinkle often signals dislike. Lips pressed thin or sucked in often means someone's bothered or holding something back.
Wow, so much information just in the face. Our hands are pretty expressive too, aren't they? What do they tell us?
Oh, hands are incredibly active, constantly communicating. Tapping fingers might signal impatience. Steepling fingers, fingertips touching, often conveys authority or confidence. Open palms generally suggest openness, honesty. Rubbing hands together might mean excitement or anticipation. Touching the cheek often means someone is thinking or evaluating. But here's where we need to debunk some myths. Common gestures like rubbing the eyes, touching or rubbing the nose, or covering the mouth. These are very often just pacifying behaviors. Self-soothing when someone feels stressed or uncomfortable. They're not reliable signs of deception. Forget the Pinocchio effect. It doesn't work like that.
That's a really good point. Debunking the myths is important. What about our arms and legs? What signals do they send?
Arms crossed is a classic example. It can signal defensiveness, feeling closed off, maybe insecure. But depending on the context and other cues, it could also be self-soothing, or even just comfortable confidence. You have to look at the whole picture. Crossed legs, too. At the ankles might mean holding back. Crossing at the knee could signal discomfort or disinterest in the conversation. That figure four leg, cross one ankle resting on the opposite knee, often comes across as displaying power or dominance, taking up more space. Generally, open arms and legs tend to suggest more confidence, approachability, and those small, repetitive movements, tapping feet, jiggling legs, constantly shifting weight, they often betray inner states like nervousness, restlessness, maybe boredom. Even the direction someone's feet are pointing can be revealing. Pointing towards the door might signal a desire to leave. Pointing towards you usually indicates engagement.
Posture seems to speak volumes too, doesn't it? Without us even thinking about it.
Absolutely. Your overall posture communicates feelings and even perceived personality traits. Sitting or standing straight often signals focus, confidence. A hunched or slumped posture might suggest boredom or indifference. Leaning in towards someone usually indicates interest. Resting your head in your hands could mean deep thought, or again, boredom depending on other cues. Tilting a head or body slightly often conveys interest or concentration.
And then there's personal space, the invisible bubble around us. How does that fit into nonverbal communication?
That falls under proxemics, studied by Edward T. Hall. The distance we naturally maintain from others signals our relationship and comfort level. We instinctively recognize these zones: intimate, personal, social, public distances. And these distances vary significantly across cultures. Someone stepping towards you or moving away or creating physical barriers like putting a bag on the chair between you, those are clear nonverbal signals about comfort, boundaries, and intentions.
So with all this complexity, how do experts like, say, FBI agents actually use this? It can't just be looking for one single tell.
No. Exactly right. It's not about finding one specific gesture like nose touching and concluding someone's lying. That's Hollywood stuff. The professional approach, like the FBI uses, emphasizes observing the whole transmission, looking for subtle shifts from a person's baseline behavior, finding tiny anomalies within the overall context. There's a famous story of an agent spotting a potential spy, not because of some grand nervous gesture, but because of how they carried a bouquet of flowers stems down. Unusual in the US, but common in parts of Eastern Europe. That tiny anomaly, that deviation from the norm in that context, prompted further investigation, which led to a confession. It's about pattern recognition and noticing deviations within a specific situation. It highlights that we're always sending signals. To understand someone, you need to combine the verbal with all the nonverbal cues and the situation itself. So for you, the listener, the takeaway is consciously pay attention to others' cues and to your own. But don't jump to conclusions based on one signal. Always consider the context. Practice things like open posture and appropriate eye contact yourself. But crucially, remember to actually listen to the words too. They provide vital context body language alone can't give you.
Okay, let's try to connect all these fascinating threads now. This whole deep dive, we've explored how understanding different facets of ourselves, our minds, how we experience time, our biases in decision-making, nature's impact, how habits form, the silent language of our bodies, how all these things link together to empower us, to help us navigate the sheer complexity of modern life.
That really is the core insight, isn't it?
Mm.
These understandings move us from just reacting to whatever life throws at us to more consciously shaping our experiences. They offer you, the listener, pathways to greater agency and intention in your daily life.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Let's boil it down to some practical strategies you can actually start using. First, for those important decisions, pause. Deliberately engage that slower analytical system too. Maybe even write down pros and cons. Don't just go with the gut reaction immediately.
Second, actively challenge your own biases. Ask yourself, okay, am I falling for confirmation bias here? Am I only looking for stuff that agrees with me? Or is that first price I saw really anchoring my judgment on what this is worth? Be a bit skeptical of your first instincts sometimes.
Third, manage your emotions around big choices. If you're feeling really stressed or angry or even overly excited, maybe wait until you feel calmer, have a bit more perspective before you commit to a big decision.
Fourth, consciously simplify choices where you can. Actively narrow down your options to avoid that choice overload paralysis.
Yeah.
Limit the overwhelming jam selection in areas of your life.
Fifth, use those nudges for good. Be your own choice architect. Design your environment to support the things you want to do. Keep the healthy snacks visible and the junk food hidden. Put your workout clothes right by your bed. Make the good choice the easy choice.
Sixth, when facing major decisions, try to seek out diverse perspectives. Talk to people outside your usual circle, people who might think differently. It helps counteract social proof and conformity, gives you a much broader view.
Seventh, embrace nature consciously. Make it a point to take short, frequent nature breaks. Even 10 or 20 minutes can make a difference. And when you're out there, really engage your senses mindfully. Notice the sounds, the smells, the light, and maybe advocate for more green spaces in your community too.
Eighth, really design your habits using those 4 laws. Make the cues obvious, use habit stacking, set implementation intentions, make the habits attractive, try temptation bundling, find a supportive group, make them easy, use the 2-minute rule, automate things, prime your environment, and make them satisfying, track your progress, find immediate rewards. And remember that identity focus. Who do you want to become?
Ninth, handle setbacks with resilience. Remember that never miss twice rule. One slip up is okay, just get back on track the next day. Have those if-then plans ready for common obstacles. And forgive yourself. Beating yourself up doesn't help. Just learn and move forward.
And 10th, communicate mindfully, paying attention to nonverbal cues, both yours and others. Practice open posture. Use appropriate eye contact. Offer genuine smiles. But crucially, don't forget to listen carefully to the words being said. Context is everything. Nonverbals add richness, but the words carry specific meaning.
So this whole deep dive, we've seen how minimalism can offer clarity, how understanding time gives perspective, mastering choice empowers you, connecting with nature revitalizes, building habits actually enables action, and decoding body language can really enrich connection.
Exactly. These insights aren't just interesting facts. They highlight how you can shift from just reacting to life to consciously shaping your experiences, your perceptions, and ultimately your well-being.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Given everything we've explored today, all those hidden influences on your choices, the subjective nature of your own time perception, the incredible power of your environment, the silent language your body is constantly speaking, how can you personally become a more intentional architect of your own daily experience? How can you shape your actions, your perceptions, your interactions to cultivate maybe a deeper sense of well-being and clarity? Remember, even small, consistent steps can make a truly monumental difference over time.
And if you found this deep dive insightful, maybe spark some ideas, please do like, share, and subscribe to this channel. We'll be back with more explorations into the fascinating topics designed to help you navigate life with a little more understanding and intention.
Ever find yourself just scrolling, on your phone?
Oh, all the time.
And then bam, suddenly you're looking at someone else's life, their amazing vacation, that great job.
Or even just like their perfect looking Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
And you start sizing up your own life.
Exactly, that feeling. It's everywhere, right? And honestly, I think we all do it more than we like to admit.
It's incredibly common. And what's really interesting is while it feels so amplified now with social media and everything,
Yeah.
it's not actually new. It's not just a digital age thing.
Really? But it feels so intense now, like a totally different kind of pressure.
Well, the sources we looked into, they show the roots go way deeper. We're talking about something called social comparison theory.
Social comparison theory.
Yeah, and it goes back to the 1950s.
The 50s, wow. Okay, so break that down for us. What's the basic idea?
Okay, so at its core, it's basically saying that we humans, we figure out where we stand by looking at other people.
Especially when there aren't, clear, objective ways to measure ourselves, our abilities, opinions. We gauge them against others.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. So if you're not sure how you're doing at, say, a hobby,
Right.
you naturally look at how other people are doing it to get a feel for your own level.
You got it. And the theory talks about two main ways we do this. There's upward comparison.
Okay.
That's looking at people we see as, better off, more successful, more skilled.
Like seeing a colleague's big promotion announcement on LinkedIn.
Exactly that. Classic upward trigger. And then there's downward comparison.
Which is?
Looking at people we see as less fortunate or maybe struggling more than us.
So maybe seeing a tough news story about someone going through hardship.
Spot on. That could spark downward comparison. But here's the twist our sources highlighted.
Yeah.
Both directions, upward and downward, they can have real downsides.
I can see that immediately. Upward seems like, well, it's a fast track to feeling rubbish about yourself.
Right.
Like you're not measuring up. Definitely. And downward, well, maybe you get a quick ego boost.
Yeah, like at least I'm not dealing with that.
Right. But it doesn't actually help you with your own goals or insecurities. It's kind of a distraction, really. Doesn't lead anywhere useful.
It's like these built-in human things can actually sort of trip us up if we're not careful.
That's a really good way to put it. They can subtly undermine our well-being.
Yeah.
And then...
Then came social media.
Exactly. Which, as you said, just threw gasoline on this whole comparison fire.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like every single scroll is just an invitation to compare.
It really does. Everyone puts out this, perfect, curated version of their life.
Yeah, the highlight reel.
Right. And it makes it incredibly hard not to get sucked into comparing your own messy reality to that.
Totally.
And, we looked at this really interesting APA study from 2023.
Oh, yeah. What did that find?
It found a really strong link between using those visually focused social media platforms.
Like Instagram and TikTok.
Exactly. A strong link between using those and more negative self-comparison.
How much use are we talking?
Well, the study showed that people spending over 45 minutes a day on these apps,
Okay.
they saw a noticeable increase, maybe around 12 to 18%, in those negative comparison feelings.
Wow.
And it happened fast, even for people who started out feeling pretty good about themselves.
So it's not just a feeling, it's measurable. The more you look at these perfect lives, the worse you feel about your own.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It really is, like you said, seeing everyone else's highlights while you're stuck with your own behind-the-scenes bloopers.
No wonder people feel like they're constantly falling short, that not enough feeling.
That analogy just hits the nail on the head. But, the material we reviewed makes a bigger point, too.
Okay.
It's not just social media's fault. There are these bigger, broader societal pressures feeding into it as well.
Right, beyond just the phone screen. Like what?
Well, think about our culture. Right. It's often very focused on capitalism competition.
Always striving for more.
Exactly. This constant push for more. It's like this never-ending race to the top, and there's always someone seemingly ahead.
And then there's that whole cultural story about what success should look like.
Oh, yeah. The big house, the fancy car, the top job title, loads of money.
We're just bombarded with those images.
They are. And the problem is those external markers, they often don't actually line up with what genuinely makes us happy or fulfilled as individuals.
Right. They become this default thing we chase, even if it's not really what we want deep down.
And we often don't even stop to ask, wait, is this my dream? Does this fit with my values?
It's so easy to get caught on that treadmill.
It is. And then you layer on top of that this idea, this sort of myth of pure meritocracy.
The idea that everyone gets exactly what they deserve based just on how hard they work.
Right. Which sounds nice, but, well, it often ignores a lot of other factors.
Like systemic issues, inequality,
Yeah.
sometimes just plain luck.
Exactly. Effort is hugely important, obviously, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
And believing it is? Well, when we compare and feel like we're failing...
It makes us feel like it's all our fault.
Precisely. It puts this unfair weight on us, this guilt and shame, like we're playing a rigged game but blaming ourselves for losing.
Oof. That's heavy.
It is. But here's the good news, the encouraging part from the research.
Okay.
Comparison, fundamentally. It's a mindset. And like any mindset,
It can be changed.
it can be reshaped,
Right.
reframed. We can actually learn to manage it.
Okay, that's hopeful. So before we get into the strategies, let's really dig into the why it's so important to change it. What are the actual costs, the real damage this constant comparing does?
Well, psychologically, the sources basically call it a game you just can't win.
Because there's always someone else.
Always someone who seems to be doing better in some area. So you get stuck in this loop, this internal voice just saying, not good enough, not good enough.
That sounds utterly exhausting, like running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up and you can never catch up.
That's a really good analogy. And the emotional impact. It's significant. We're talking increased anxiety, a higher risk of depression.
And resentment, right, that feeling towards the people you envy.
Ugh, yes. Resentment is so corrosive, it just eats away at you.
Horrible feeling.
It really is. And there's science on this, too. We saw a 2021 study, I think it was in the Journal of Happiness Studies.
Yeah.
It showed a strong link between frequent upward comparison, looking those better off people, and not just lower life satisfaction overall,
Which makes sense.
but also a much higher chance of experiencing burnout.
Burnout, of course. All that mental energy just tracking and judging yourself against everyone else, it has to be draining.
Completely draining. And it's not just mental or emotional. This chronic stress, it can show up physically, too.
Physically, how does that work?
Well, when you're constantly stressed, your body pumps out hormones like cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right. And over time, being in that constant state of alert,
Mm.
it can mess with your sleep, cause tension headaches, even weaken your immune system.
Wow. So our bodies react to feeling socially less than, almost like it's a physical threat.
Kind of, yeah. It shows how deep this stuff runs. It's a perceived social threat, triggering a primal stress response.
That's wild. And then there's how it just messes with our view of reality, right? We start thinking everyone else has it all figured out.
Totally. We build this story that everyone else is just gliding through life effortlessly.
While we're just like stumbling around trying to keep it together.
Exactly. It's that trap again,
Mm.
comparing your messy, unedited, behind-the-scenes reality.
To everyone else's polished highlight reel.
You got it. And the sources gave some really good examples, like the colleague who gets a promotion but is secretly battling massive imposter syndrome.
Or the friend whose family looks perfect online, but they're dealing with serious relationship problems offline.
Right. We just forget that absolutely everyone has their own struggles, their own challenges.
We just don't see them. Nobody posts their biggest fears or failures, do they?
Not usually. And maybe the biggest cost, the one that really stood out from the research,
What's that?
is how comparison can actually rob us of our own potential.
Rob us of potential. How so?
Think about it. If you're constantly focused on what someone else is doing, on their path,
You lose sight of your own.
exactly. You waste so much energy chasing goals that maybe don't even matter to you, just because they look good on someone else.
Instead of figuring out what actually lights you up.
Right. You end up trying to cram yourself into someone else's story instead of fully writing and living your own.
Yeah.
It holds you back from being authentically you.
Okay, so deep-seated habit, amplified like crazy serious costs, well-being, potential, the works.
Got it. So the big question, what can we actually do? How do we start breaking free?
Right, this is where the practical stuff comes in. And the sources offer a whole range of strategies. The first one, maybe the most important starting point, is awareness. Just recognizing your triggers.
Makes sense. You can't fix a leak if you don't know where it's coming from.
Exactly. So the advice is pretty simple. Maybe keep a little journal or even just a note on your phone.
And track what? Track those moments when you feel that comparison pang. What were you doing? Who were you with? What thoughts popped up? How did it feel, physically and emotionally?
So you start seeing the patterns like, oh, it always happens after I scroll Instagram, or it's when I talk to that specific person.
Precisely. Or maybe it's certain times a day when you feel more vulnerable. Understanding the when and why gives you power over it.
Okay. So for you listening, a great first step. Next time you feel that comparison monster sneak in, just pause. Ask yourself, okay, what just triggered this? And maybe, can I even control this trigger right now? That awareness itself can dial it down.
That's a perfect action step. And it flows right into the next strategy.
Yeah.
Limiting your exposure to social media.
Ah, yes. The comparison minefield itself, can't really talk about this without tackling the social media beast.
You really can't. These platforms are just so good at showing us this curated, often unrealistic lives. Remember that research we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, the one showing how much pressure people feel to look perfect online, like everyone's running their own PR campaign.
Exactly. It's rarely the full picture. Now, the sources aren't saying you have to become like a digital hermit.
Right, not deleting everything.
No, but setting healthy boundaries is key.
What does that look like, practically?
Well, first step, unfollow accounts that consistently make you feel bad. If someone's feed just leaves you feeling inadequate or envious.
Hit unfollow. Protect your peace.
Absolutely. Then be intentional about what you do follow. Curate your feed. Fill it with stuff that's genuinely inspiring or educational or funny or just makes you feel good.
And use those screen time tools.
Definitely. Those tools on your phone, they're actually really helpful. Set limits. Even cutting back a little bit can free up so much mental space.
Okay, here's an action step for you. Maybe try a 24-hour social media detox this weekend. Just see how it feels. Notice your mood, your focus. You might be surprised.
Good challenge.
Okay.
Okay, next strategy. This one feels more proactive, maybe. Reframing comparison as inspiration.
Ooh, I like this one. A mental judo move.
Yeah, it's a powerful shift. So instead of seeing someone's success and immediately feeling envy or less than,
You consciously flip it.
you flip it. You ask, okay, what can I actually learn here? What skills did they build? What steps did they take? Is there something I could apply to my journey?
So it goes from, oh, why not me, to, how did they do that?
Exactly. It's about sparking curiosity, not self-criticism. The sources even suggested maybe reaching out to people you admire.
Really? Just ask them.
Yeah, ask about their path. You'd be surprised how willing people can be to share. Or even simpler, just pick one positive habit you see in them.
Like they get up early to exercise.
Right. And try incorporating that into your routine. See how it feels.
Okay, action step time. Think of one person you've compared yourself to recently. Now, can you list 3 specific things, qualities, actions, habits that you admire and could genuinely work towards yourself?
Love that. Okay, next strategy really pulls the focus back inward. Defining your own version of success.
This feels huge. So much comparison comes from measuring ourselves against these external, often random standards.
Totally. Society throws all these images at us. The job title, the income, the possession.
Things that supposedly equal success.
Right. But this strategy is about stepping back, pausing, and asking yourself, what does success actually mean to me? What are my real values? What are my priorities?
Writing your own definition.
Exactly. On your own terms. And your definition might look completely different. Maybe it's about creativity or family time or making an impact or just feeling free.
Running your own race, on your own track, with your own finish line.
That's it exactly. So for you listening, take some real time. Think about it.
Yeah.
Write it down. What does success look like for you? Maybe even draft a little personal mission statement.
I heard a great example from the source material. Success for me is having enough time for my family and being able to pursue my art regardless of my income level.
That's beautiful. And it connects nicely to the next one. Cultivating a daily practice of gratitude.
Ugh, gratitude. The sources called it comparison's kryptonite.
That's such a great description because it really works like that. When you consciously focus on what you do have, what you're thankful for.
There's just less room for envy.
Exactly. It shifts your whole mindset from lack, from scarcity to abundance. You start noticing all the good that's already there.
And there's science behind this too, right?
Oh, yeah. A 2020 study, I think in the Journal of Emotion, found that regular gratitude practice seriously boosts well-being and actually reduces feelings of envy and comparison.
That's powerful. And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Not at all.
No.
Super simple. The advice is just take a few minutes each day, write down maybe 3 things you're genuinely thankful for.
And they can be small things.
Totally. Your morning coffee, sunshine, a nice chat with someone, anything that brings a little spark of appreciation.
Okay, easy action step. Set a reminder on your phone. Every day, maybe morning or evening, jot down those 3 things, make it a habit.
Perfect. And building on that positivity, the next strategy, celebrating your wins, big and small.
This is so important. It's way too easy to focus only on what we haven't done or where we fall short.
While totally overlooking our own progress and achievements, this strategy is about flipping that script.
Making a real effort to acknowledge your own accomplishments.
Yes, even the seemingly small ones. It's about building that internal validation, that sense of, hey, I did that, instead of always looking outside for approval.
How can we do that practically?
Well, one simple way is just ending your day by writing down one thing you're proud of accomplishing.
I like that.
Or, a fun idea from the sources, create a wins jar. Write down achievements on little slips of paper, drop them in.
Oh, I love the wins jar, like a physical collection of your successes.
Right, and then when you're feeling a bit down, you can pull a few out and remind yourself of how far you've come.
Okay, action step for you. Start noticing those little wins during your day. Acknowledge them, write them down, put them in a jar, whatever works. Just notice your own progress.
Great. Next up, taking a broader perspective and focusing on your own unique journey.
Yes. The reminder that life isn't some linear race where everyone starts at the same time and follows the same path.
Exactly. It's more like a winding individual marathon. Everyone's on their own course at their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20.
It's just going to make you miserable.
Totally. Or like the source material said, it's like judging a fish on its ability to climb a tree.
Hmm.
We all have different strengths, different timelines.
So the focus needs to be on your progress.
On your own growth, how far have you come? Think back, where were you a year ago? Or even a few months ago?
What skills have you learned? What challenges have you overcome?
Right. How have you evolved? That's the real measure.
Okay, here's a powerful action step. Try creating a timeline of your life's significant milestones. Not just career stuff, but personal growth, relationships, hurdles you cleared. Reflect on your own unique path.
That's a great exercise. Okay, next crucial strategy. Cultivating self-compassion.
Being kind to yourself, which sounds simple but can be really hard.
It really can. Self-compassion is basically treating yourself the way you treat a good friend who's struggling.
With kindness, understanding, empathy.
Exactly. So when you catch yourself comparing and feeling bad, instead of beating yourself up,
Try offering yourself some kindness.
yes, acknowledge the feeling without judging it. Recognize that feeling imperfect or struggling. It's just part of being human. Kristen Neff, who researches this stuff, really emphasizes that shared human experience aspect.
What's a practical way to do that in the moment?
The material suggested something really simple but profound. When you feel that self-criticism rising, just gently place your hand over your heart
Okay.
and silently repeat a phrase like, "I'm enough just as I am," or "May I be kind to myself right now."
It sounds surprisingly powerful, actually, grounding.
It can be incredibly comforting. So your next action step, try it. Next time that comparison gremlin pops up, hand on heart, offer yourself that moment of kindness.
Okay. Moving on, this next one is about our environment, surrounding yourself with supportive and uplifting people.
Oh, this is huge. The people we spend time with have such a massive impact on our mindset, our self-perception.
If you're constantly around negative or super competitive people,
It's going to be way harder to break free from comparison. You know that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Makes you really think.
It does. So be intentional. Seek out and really nurture relationships with people who are genuinely supportive.
People who celebrate your wins without envy, who just make you feel good.
Yes. Focus on quality over quantity here. Find your cheerleaders.
Action step. This week, reach out to at least one person in your life who is that positive, supportive force. Connect with them actively.
Love it. Okay, next strategy loops back a bit. Challenging the highlight reel.
Right. Remembering that what we see isn't always the full picture.
Not even close, usually.
Yeah.
Whether it's online or even in person, people tend to show their best side. They hide the struggles, the doubts, the messiness.
It really is like comparing your raw documentary footage to their polished movie trailer.
Perfect analogy. So when you feel that envy rising towards someone's seemingly perfect life,
Try to humanize them.
exactly. Remind yourself they're human too, with their own challenges. The sources had a neat exercise for this.
What was it?
Try writing down 3 potential difficulties or problems that this person might be facing, even if you can't see them.
Ah, that helps break down the illusion of perfection. Reminds you everyone's got stuff going on.
Precisely. Okay, next up, a really empowering idea.
Yeah.
Cultivating a growth mindset.
This is based on Carol Dweck's work, right? Shifting how you see abilities.
Exactly. Instead of thinking talents are fixed, I'm either good at this or I'm not. A growth mindset means believing you can develop abilities through effort and learning.
So it's not, I'm bad at this, is I can get better at this.
Right. Focus on the process, the learning, the growing. And this totally changes how you see other people's success.
Also.
Instead of it making you feel bad, it becomes inspiration. Proof that growth is possible if you put in the work.
Okay, action step. Think of a skill you admire in someone else. Now, commit to spending just 10 minutes each day learning or practicing something related to it. Embrace that growth journey.
Excellent. Building on that internal focus, next is disconnecting from the need for constant external validation.
Ooh, this is a big one. Relying on likes, comments, praise.
Yeah, if your self-worth depends on what other people think, you're always going to be vulnerable to comparison. You're basically outsourcing your self-esteem.
Outsourcing your self-esteem, that's a great phrase for it. True self-worth has to come from inside, right?
It has to be rooted in your own values, your own efforts, your own integrity. not fleeting opinions.
So how do we start building that internal foundation?
Well, the sources proposed a pretty bold experiment.
Go on.
Try going one whole day seeking zero external validation. No posting for likes, no fishing for compliments. Just be present with yourself without needing external approval.
Wow, that sounds challenging, but also potentially really freeing.
It could be eye-opening. So, action step. Try it. Pick a day this week, commit to the validation detox. See how it feels.
I might actually try that. Okay, next. Embracing your uniqueness.
Yes, celebrating what makes you you. Your unique mix of experiences, passions, quirks, everything. Comparison tries to make us all the same, but this is about fighting that.
Embracing the things that make you different, even the things you might see as flaws.
Often those are the most interesting, authentic parts of us. They make us relatable, human.
So how do we embrace them more?
Simple but powerful idea from the material. Make a list. Write down 5 things you genuinely believe make you unique.
I like that. A personal what makes me special list.
Exactly. Keep it somewhere you can see a desk, mirror, phone wallpaper. A little reminder of your own awesome individuality. Action step. Go make that list. Right now, maybe? Put it somewhere visible.
Okay, nearly there. Next strategy. The power of mindfulness.
Mindfulness is really about bringing your full attention non-judgmentally to right now.
To the present moment. Sights, sounds, feelings.
Yeah, just experiencing it directly, without getting swept away by thoughts about the past, future, or other people. It anchors you in your own reality.
Which sounds super helpful when those comparison thoughts start swirling.
It really is. Even simple exercises like just focusing on your breath for a few minutes,
Yeah.
that can quiet the mental chatter.
And there are loads of apps and guided meditations for this now, right?
Tons. Something for everyone, even if you only have 5 minutes. Action step. Try a 5-minute mindfulness exercise today. Just sit quietly. Focus on your breath. Gently bring your mind back when it wanders.
Okay, and the final strategy. This one's really important. Recognizing when you might need a little extra support. Seeking professional help.
Absolutely critical. If these feelings of comparison are really persistent, if they're seriously affecting your mood, your relationships, your daily life, please don't just try to tough it out alone.
It's like you wouldn't try to set your own broken leg.
Yeah.
Mental health is health.
Exactly. They're trained professionals, therapists, counselors who can really help you unpack these patterns and develop healthier ways of thinking and coping.
And therapies like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be really effective for this kind of negative thinking.
Very effective. The main message here is there is absolutely no shame in seeking help. It's a sign of strength. Resources are out there.
So the final action step today. If this resonates, if you feel stuck, take some time to research therapists or online therapy platforms. Prioritize your mental well-being.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's really important to remember, isn't it, that this isn't a quick fix. Overcoming comparison is a journey.
Definitely a journey. There will be good days and bad days, times you feel great, times you slip back into old habits. That's totally normal.
The goal isn't perfection. It's having these tools, these strategies to gently guide yourself back to your own path. Progress, not perfection.
And just think about the freedom in that. Taking all that energy you used to waste on comparing.
And putting it into your own life, your goals, your passions.
Exactly. Reclaiming your time, your energy, your joy. It's incredibly empowering.
I love that. And maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. Imagine your life with you as the main character, fully stepping into your own story, shining in your own way.
Instead of just being a supporting character in someone else's narrative. Because ultimately, the only approval that truly matters, the only person you really need to impress, is yourself.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much for joining us on the deep dive today.
Thanks for having me.
We'll connect with you next time.